Okay, so there is a kind of centralization that's, I think, intrinsic to AI. It's sort of like, think about, what AGI would be. It would be like some sort of centralized God almost. But that's why it's so important in countries to control an AI, because there's going to be like the war of the AIs. That's going to probably happen in our lifetime. And then you, of course, have Web3 is very decentralized. And so it might seem like those are incompatible, but I actually think that makes them very compatible because, of course, AI needs a lot of data. Well, what a blockchain gives you is extremely well-organized, publicly available data, right? It's a publicly available record of ownership. It is great data for training an AI. Once you decide what you want to do with an AI, okay, AI makes some recommendation, a blockchain lets you do it without anybody's permission. And that's extremely important. So it's kind of like you have this decentralized database, you have centralized computing, and you put them together, and you get new possibilities. That's what we're seeing with NeoSwap. You have new economic possibilities that come from this blend of centralized and decentralized power.
Hey everyone, welcome to The Edge Podcast. I'm DeFi Dad from Fourth Revolution Capital, and I'm joined here by my co-host from 4RC, Nomadic. Today, we'll be interviewing the co-founder and CEO of NeoSwap.ai, John Ennis. So NeoSwap is one of the very few teams that has managed to implement AI into their crypto application that is currently live, but in development towards new products. So NeoSwap is, in layman's terms, I think it's best described as an AI-powered economic engine. You can think of the recommendation engine that you've probably seen on popular websites like Amazon. If that had a baby with like a DEX or NFT aggregator, to me, like that's what NeoSwap is today. Now we're going to talk about the broader scope of what they're building and the infrastructure that they are building to enable an even more powerful AI-powered economic engine. But first, we're going to get some background on NeoSwap. So Nomadic, what are you thinking in terms of this like intersection of AI and crypto? It's something that we've talked about for quite a while. And I think it's fair to say that NeoSwap really was like one of the first products that we saw as like a manifestation of some of these like theses that we were dreaming up over the last few years.
Yeah, absolutely. We've actually been waiting for this trend of like AI and Web3 to crystallize further. Just going back to 2020, the 4RC fund mandate has always included AI and blockchain, but we just hadn't seen too many opportunities of AI and Web3 kind of coming together. It's really been like, to steal like a Bitcoin term, like a gradually then suddenly thing over the last year with AI proliferation and development. So thankfully, today we get to talk to John, who's right at that intersection of Web3 and AI.
Whether you're a trader, farmer, analyst, or newbie, you can trade smart with KYBERSWAP, the OG decentralized exchange and aggregator on 13 chains. Swap at the best rates, farm with real yields, set limit orders, use their proprietary trading and AI tools with the best UX in DeFi, securely and permissionlessly. Get better rates, better opportunities, better alpha, and a better trading experience. Trade smart now at KYBERSWAP.com. GTRADE by Gains Network is a decentralized leverage trading platform allowing users to synthetically trade crypto, forex, stocks, and commodities with up to 1000x leverage. GTRADE is live on both Polygon and Arbitrum, with over 30 billion in all-time trading volume and nearly 50 million in vault liquidity. The platform has consistently been among the top earning protocols, with 7-figure monthly revenue and a net deflationary token. GTRADE has become an on-chain stable for both traders and yield seekers. Check them out at gains.trade or by searching Gains Network on Twitter. The future of Web3 is bright, but crypto startups, DAOs, and on-chain organizations can't scale without tooling to power world-class financial and payment operations. Introducing Utopia, your all-in-one platform to create, execute, and understand your Gnosis-safe transactions. Execute payroll 10x faster through automated payment plans. Coordinate reimbursements and accounts payable through payment requests. Execute multi-sig transactions faster with your global team through signing links. View, label, and categorize all of your safe transactions in one place. Start managing your on-chain payments today by going to utopialabs.com. To get started with gasless payments, message Utopia's co-founder on Twitter at 0xkaito. So before we get started, just a brief background on John. So first off, he holds a PhD in mathematics and completed his postdoc in computational neuroscience. So his official title is Dr. John Ennis, but he kindly lets us call him John. He is the past founder of Agora, which is a successful enterprise AI services company. He's the original author of the NeoSwap algorithm that we're going to talk all about today. John, of course, with that background, brings invaluable experience and leadership to NeoSwap as CEO and co-founder. He co-founded NeoSwap about a year ago. It was a project that was incubated in his other company, Agora. Since then, they've closed a $2.1 million pre-seed, and they will be raising a seed round later this year. And then just one last note, I want to disclose that I am an angel invested in NeoSwap, and 4RC is very proud to be advising the team. So on that note, John, welcome to the Edge podcast. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing great. Thanks a lot for having me. Nice to see you guys again.
It's a real pleasure to have you because, I mean, we know you at this point as like one of the very few experts in the world who's building at this intersection of crypto or Web3 and AI. And one of the things we're going to dig into is AI is nothing new for you. You've been working in this industry for a very long time. So this is part of the reason we're really excited for the products that are being built by NeoSwap. You bring all that sort of background from AI and can thankfully infuse that into all of this bleeding edge Web3 building. So why don't we just start with the basics of your background? Do you want to share a bit more about just like who you are as a person and of course, what prompted you to like take that bold step of starting to build NeoSwap?
Well, yeah, I mean, NeoSwap is something I've been interested in like for most of my adult life. You guys might know that. It really started when I was 12. My dad is a famous scientist, and he used to always run experiments on us as a kid. Kids. My dad has 3 doctorates, actually. He just recently got his 3rd one. He is a mathematical psychologist. So, like, when we'd go out to restaurants, he would order all the desserts, and then we'd have to try them all, whether we liked them or not, and then rate them. And he would do some analysis and make a little chart to show where we are on the map, and try to, this sort of childhood I had was, always analyzing people's preferences. Okay. And one of the experiments my dad ran on us kids one year was Christmas morning. We came downstairs and all the presents were under the tree, but there were no tags on them. Okay. So, we're kind of wondering what to do. My dad said, all right, well, we're going to do an experiment. We're going to hand out these presents at random. And I have 3 brothers and sisters, so there are 4 of us. Hand out the presents at random. And then you guys have to trade one-on-one. And when it's your turn, you can propose trades to each other. And we're going to see if the presents end up back where they're supposed to. Okay. So anyway, we ran this experiment. It turns out the answer is no, they don't. If you have a bunch of kids, people don't end up with the right presents. And it was quite stressful for me because I've always been interested in efficiency, and it seemed really inefficient and kind of cruel, honestly, what was going on. But it got me interested in this problem of multi-way trading. So as I grew up, I was always trying to figure out, okay, because it's really interesting when you think about all the mismatches. People own stuff. A lot of times people think they don't have enough money. And actually the real problem is that they own the wrong things. And if those things could just go somewhere else where they're more valuable and other things could replace them, we'd all potentially be better off. So that got me interested in that problem. In 2017, I came up with the first version of the NeoSwap algorithm, which solves the problem of finding best multi-way trades in groups. Okay. Now, there's a bit of my background here you should know, which is after I did my math PhD, I went into computational neuroscience, and I learned kind of basics of AI and also how the brain works. Then I went into market research consulting. And a lot of the AI that we use at NeoSwap is really market research AI because we need to predict. You think about like what my other company, Agora, does. They work with large companies to do things like optimize ice cream, okay? And when you're trying to predict, you're trying to make good ice cream, it's not enough to just try to make the one best ice cream for the population. The fact is everybody wants different ice cream, okay? You get really aware of that as a market researcher, that if you try to make one product that does well on average, what you end up with is a bunch of really boring products. And to a large extent, that's what happened in the United States in the 60s and 70s. The reason why mainstream beer is boring and mainstream bread is boring and mainstream pasta sauce is boring is because they were trying to find the best product on average, okay? And a big insight that happened in the 80s, late 70s, 80s, and into the 90s was different people want different things. And so when you're developing products, you have to try to optimize products for segments or ultimately individual people. And you have to estimate how much individual people will want different products, okay? So at NeoSwap, we have that same issue with NFTs, where you have different people want different things, and you want to try to figure out how much do people want those different NFTs. So if you can estimate how much people want different NFTs, what you'll find is that people own NFTs that they don't value very much, that other people would value more, okay? And if you can figure out how to move those NFTs and some money around, the money makes a big difference, actually. You need to have a little bit of money because otherwise you're just back to barter, and barter has all kinds of problems. We want to go forward from money to this new type of commerce. Then what happens is, actually, you can get trades to happen in places where nothing was moving. In some of our early experiments, we started on stacks. We can talk about why we did that. But in some of our early experiments on stacks, we were live for several months, and there were 35% of stacks collections didn't trade a single time on the secondary market, but traded many times in our rooms, where you have people have NFTs they can't sell. They're impossible to sell, but they'll trade as long as other stuff's moving around. And so that was kind of the breakthrough for me, was realizing that this problem from my childhood about finding best multi-way trades, which I tried to do with Facebook Marketplace in 2017, it didn't really go anywhere. I realized that was ideally suited to Web3. That in Web3, people own their things. They don't provisionally own them. If you, suppose you're, in a Web2 game or something, you don't really own your item, right? This is kind of the apocryphal story about Vitalik and the sword or whatever that kept him up at night. I'm not entirely sure that story is true, but maybe it is. Even if it's not, it's a good story because it illustrates the problem that in a Web2 game, you don't really own your stuff. And in a Web3 game, you do. You can take it with you. So in Web3, you own your stuff. And that means you can come to an event, you can participate, and we have all different ways of doing our events. And if we figure out a trade, you can trade your stuff, and you don't need anybody's permission to do it. You can just do it. Okay, we make an app. We don't need to work inside Facebook Marketplace. We can just make an app. It's very free. The people who say that Web3 crypto doesn't offer anything, really have no idea what they're talking about. There's all sorts of new possibilities that are made possible by this abstraction of ownership. Okay, so people own their stuff. You use AI to estimate how much people value things they own. Okay. And then you can use a combination of optimization and AI to figure out how do you reassign ownership so everyone benefits. And then people are better off. And that creates value. Everybody is giving up stuff they don't want. They're getting stuff they do want. And potentially they're all willing to pay money for that. So that gets kind of the heart of NeoSwap, is how do you reassign ownership in a population for mutual benefit? And it can be the problem can be solved.
Yeah, John, I love that answer. I think when you and I first started talking many months ago, the thing that resonated with me with NeoSwap is I have a background in sports card collecting, and you can only ever really trade with one other person. And then I got into NBA Top Shot, and we had the same problems. There was all this OTC trading that wanted to happen, and you really couldn't get past one trading partner because the complexity of trading between more than one other person just breaks down between humans. And what NeoSwap does is extends the permutations and those connections out to what is the maximum number of trades that can happen right now on NeoSwap between how many different people? Is it 30? Is that the magic number? Or
well, yeah, it depends. If you want to, it really depends on a lot of things, but generally speaking, because it does get to be a really computationally intense problem to solve it. So we have gone out to 30 people, 500 items can be solved. Okay. After that, you have to use heuristics, and you do have to start to get approximate solutions. And actually, our head of research, Ali Hader-Ozer, maybe we can put his link in the show notes, has spent his last 15 years researching this topic and has great heuristics. So we can actually handle very large populations through approximate answers. But in an event, what you actually run into is once you have about 30 people together, it gets to be really hard to evaluate all the NFTs that the other people have. So we have limits where everybody can put up to seven NFTs for sale. And then you've got 30 people, 210 NFTs, and it's manageable. After that, it starts to become a bit of a mess. So the limitations are more on the human side. If you're willing to give up on exact answers and you're willing to settle for approximate answers, the limitations are really on the UX and on the human side, which is why we do AI proposed trades. We can talk about that later too.
I think sometimes when I go to try to explain NeoSwap to someone, I focus way too much on the trade routing aspect. But I feel like because of what you just articulated, I realize I'm missing a big part of the story, which is the recommendation engine almost feeds the liquidity. That's what's so powerful here, is that if you're able to use NeoSwap AI to help folks to discover new items that they would be interested in, that they value, that they'd be willing to trade for, it obviously deepens liquidity in that market.
Well, there's kind of three there's three pieces really to NeoSwap, okay? And the first two fit together to make the third. The first one is multi-way trade finding. And maybe just I can show, maybe if you let me know if this works.
Please, that would be great. And we'll kind of talk through this for anyone who's listening to the podcast later.
Okay, so multi-way trade finding. We've got something like this. So let me know when you can see this.
Cool. So just in case folks are listening to this later, we're looking at a photo which just basically shows like 10, 20 different trades all routing to different folks at once. So it kind of shows like basically what would happen under the hood when you use NeoSwap.
Yes, so we have 9 people who came together in an event. People listed items that they wanted to sell. They bid on each other's items. They set a limit on how much they wanted to spend that day. And we figured out this is the best trade for the group. And to your point, Adam, no amount of discussion would, you'd never figure this out, right? Even with 2 people, if you have a bunch of items, you're not going to find the best trade through discussion. Like you really need to do it mathematically. And we do have another for auctions. We have a simplification where if you just have one seller and many buyers, you can have a simplified solution where you have a new type of auction, which is actually more efficient. So that's the first part, is this kind of trade finding, multi-way trade finding, okay? Now, the second part is estimating how much people value different things. And that can be done using the data from these events, the on-chain data that's really about, that tells you about the user, and then marketplace data and also on-chain data that tells you about the NFTs and potentially about the user behavior inside the marketplaces. So you basically have things you know about the NFTs, you have things you know about the users. From that, you're able to predict how much people value items. And the way you train that model is you take as the target the values that you're getting in this event. People show up for events, they list items, you get very rich data. And actually, in this thesis, I have, here we go, a little schematic. And maybe we can give a link to the thesis where we've got kind of live parties, multi-day events. Later this year, we'll have smart marketplaces. That's all giving us really rich data. That gets combined with on-chain data. Those data all go together into our models, allow us to estimate prices for everybody. I mean, if market research term, we say utility. And those estimations go back into the top, and you get this kind of flywheel where you get more and more efficient trading as more data get collected. And the kind of holy grail of where this is going is we're able to propose these trades that you could never find. That honestly, that's a magical trade. That trade I was looking at is a great trade. All right. But the idea is that NFT I'm giving up is valuable to somebody else. So NeoSwap is going to be able to either sell that potentially in a multi-way trade now or sell it later because it knows that that NFT is valuable to other people in the ecosystem. Yeah, so that's a whole new form of commerce because look at how little money it took. That I only had to give up one stack that's like $1, and I got rid of an NFT that I don't want, and I got an NFT I do want, right? Meanwhile, if I tried to sell my NFT, maybe it would never sell, and I'd never be able to buy that other NFT. So we can get stuff to happen without needing liquidity. That's the idea.
So to summarize, the user experience today on NeoSwap is we call them events. I come and I connect through one of the 5 chains, which is Stacks, Ethereum, Polygon, Solana, or
actually
what's
Bitcoin.
The other one I'm
We're
forgetting?
doing Ordinal event.
Bitcoin. There we go.
Yeah.
Through which we got to ask you about Ordinals here as well. And I'm connecting to an event. So this is still a very coordinated sort of event that happens kind of like an auction. Like I might come to an event that is lasting a week or several days, but can you try to explain to us, like, what does that look like in the future once you've trained the AI more and you have all of this rich data to enable even more like multi-way trading?
Well, eventually we won't need people to come to events. First off, the events, you might sell events are neat and fun. They can kick off a launch of a collection. They can be, regular ways for the community to get together. Like historically, it was always the case that economic and social activity happened together, right? The fair and the market were in the town square. They were both there. So there always has been this overlap. So I think the events will never go away, but there will also be a standing marketplace where you just have items that are listed. You're placing really provisional bids where you'll say, suppose that something's listed for 1 ETH and you don't have 1 ETH, but you say, all right, I'll pay 1 ETH for that, but I don't want to come up with more than 0.1 ETH for my wallet. That means you'll agree to a trade where 0.9 ETH worth of your stuff sells, you come up with a little bit of extra ETH and you get the item, okay? So you get a bunch of provisional bids, and then the solver will be all the time proposing trades to people, okay? The final form is a chatbot, which we call Theo. And actually, ChatGPT helped me to name Theo. Theo stands for Trading Helper for Exploration and Optimization. It's a reference to Van Gogh's brother, Theo, the art dealer. So the idea is you interface with the chatbot, and you say, Theo, what's the cheapest way I can get a Bored Ape? And Theo looks in your wallet and says, okay, well, Travis, if you're willing to give up your CryptoPunk and 2 ETH, I can get you a Bored Ape. What do you think? You say, okay. Or you say, what can I get for, you have 3 NFTs you don't want. What can I get for these? And Theo looks again, understands you, and says, well, what do you think about this trade? And it involves the 3 NFTs that you were looking to get rid of. So that's the idea. Or you might just say, what's a good trade for me, Theo? What do you have? And he just proposes something, it's weird to gender a chatbot, but it's called Theo. Theo was a man, so I guess I'll say he for the chatbot. Anyway, that's the idea, is that in the long run, it'll be a lot like generative AI. I mean, it's not technically a generative AI because it's not trained that way, but it will act like one. Just like Midjourney. You type in what type of image you want to see, and you get an image. On Theo, you'll type in what sort of trade you're looking for, and Theo will do his best to find that trade for you, leveraging everything he knows about all the people in the ecosystem, all the sales that are potentially available, put it all together, and deliver a trade to you. So we get all the stuff moving around that otherwise would just be stuck.
Love it. Sounds like Theo is going to be the man. We're all going to need to talk to Theo at some point to get our NFTs.
That's the idea. I mean, it's a lot like ChatGPT, where Theo can either, think about OpenAI, how they've got 2 ways they're going. One is plugins into their platform, okay, and the other is their API inside other businesses. And both paths are available to us as well. We have our front end, and we can have plugins where maybe communities can plug in, and they can customize different rooms for themselves, and they can add extra information. Could even be like a little bit like MySpace for the people who are old enough listening who might remember that, where, you have customized your room. So that's one end. And the other is we want to power lots of businesses. These tools are really generally very useful. I mean, think about reassigning ownership. That's the heart of economic activity. So that's everywhere. And that's why we say it's like the steam engine, where the steam engine had, you guys are Fourth Revolution Capital. So first industrial revolution, we had decentralized power. You had power moving away from rivers. That was kind of the big thing. So you could put power everywhere, and that led to the first industrial revolution. And so what we've got now is the ability to release economic value in all sorts of places where it couldn't be released before. Okay, just like the steam engine let power be placed where it couldn't be placed before. So now what we can do is we can get things moving. And every little niche of the economy can get things moving where it couldn't move before. So it's going to be a massive release of economic value.
With over 170 million TVL cross-chain, the multi-chain liquid staking protocol Stader Labs is just about to launch the ETH liquid staking token ETHX. ETHX will give you the best of decentralized staking and DeFi yields. What's more is that anyone can permissionlessly run an ETHX node with just a 4 ETH bond. To get more alpha on the ETHX launch, go to staderlabs.com/Ethereum. With over 60,000 subscribers and 450 integrations, Push Protocol, the leader in Web3 communications, just launched Push Group Chat. While Push Chat already enables secure and private wallet-to-wallet messaging between any wallet addresses, the new Push Group Chat allows anyone to permissionlessly create groups, share files, and collaborate with communities natively on Web3. Try it now at app.push.org.
I want you to comment just on this Ordinals phenomenon and what it's meant to NeoSwap. And it just kind of came out of left field for me, but what are your thoughts on it currently?
Okay, well, if people aren't familiar with Ordinals, Ordinals is a way of putting data directly on the Bitcoin blockchain and associating with particular Satoshis. So Satoshis are the smallest unit of measure for Bitcoin. There's 100 million Satoshis in a Bitcoin. And the idea of an ordinal is, you can think of it as like you're writing data on a Satoshi. That if you had like $1 million, especially you had $100 million bills, okay, that would be like 1 Bitcoin. So a dollar bill is a Satoshi. And then you write some art, or you somehow put some information on that dollar bill. That's like an ordinal, okay? So that's why they call them inscriptions. You inscribe them, you don't mint them, because you're putting data in there. It's really interesting because you don't have a lot of the niceties you have on smart contract chains. And so ordinals are, I think of them as kind of proto-NFTs. They're not exactly NFTs. I think people are just used to NFTs as an attempt to map NFT culture onto ordinals. And I think it's eventually going to go in a slightly different direction. But it's very exciting because now you finally have something to do with Bitcoin and a reason to pay mining fees that isn't purely a financial transaction. There can be, now you get into the kind of social, cultural aspects of life that are also important. So I think that's very, very interesting. We got interested in ordinals because we started on Stacks. We wanted to start in a small community. We knew we were doing something weird. I mean, if you look at NeoSwap, it's like that classic example where things that really changed the world started off looking like toys. NeoSwap kind of looks like a toy when you first start to see it. You're like, okay, well, what's that? It seems like some quirky thing. Some people don't get it at all. It's like there's two groups of people. Like people like you who really get it and are into it and are like unbelievably excited. Other people don't get it at all. There's not much in the middle. And so with getting back to Stacks, the reason we launched there was we wanted a small group of enthusiastic early adopters who were open-minded, and that's what the Stacks community is, who would give this thing a chance. And they gave us great feedback, and they helped us. We joined their accelerator. We really got going. Then we got live on Solana. We were on Solana for like a week when the SBF things happened. So we said, all right, we have to get on Polygon as quickly as possible. And so we did that. Then we got on Ethereum. And then Ordinals happened. And we were very close to Ordinals because of our relationship with the Stacks community. Stacks is sort of a layer 2 for Bitcoin. You can think of it layer 1.5. It'll be a layer 2 later this year for Bitcoin. So there's lots of Bitcoin awareness in the Stacks community. We thought, all right, we got to get on this. This is a way for us to like really contribute because we have something just evolving. We can do our trades. We can do our auctions. And so we got into that. It's a lot of fun. It was really hard, honestly. Bitcoin is really hard to work with compared to some of the smart contract chains. So Kuba our CTO didn't sleep for like 2 weeks. Like literally he was sleeping like one night or like 1 hour a night. And he got us live on Ordinals. So we can do Ordinals we can do smart auctions of Ordinals for Ethereum, Polygon, Solana, and Stacks. The one thing that we actually can't do yet is Ordinals for Bitcoin. That turns out to be harder because you have to mess with the Bitcoin transactions. There's these things called partially signed Bitcoin transactions that you have to mess with, or another thing called DLCs, which is a sort of smart contract on Bitcoin that we're getting into. So those are the things we can do. We can do over the counter trading of Ordinals for these items, and it was really just a chance for us to like connect up with something that we believed in anyway because we're kind of close to Bitcoin, and also just there's a party going on, so we wanted to join it, and it was really good for us. It made us cross-chain actually. Like when we do Ordinals for these other types of currency, it's a cross-chain transaction. So like we'll be a year old on Friday, so we're 2 days now, the 29th of March. We'll be a year old, and here we are 1 year into it when we're on 5 chains and doing cross-chain transactions, doing AI stuff on top. So I think that we've done really well in a year. So I'm very proud of all the progress we've made.
John, one last question before we close out. For someone who is new to crypto, but into AI, or into AI, but new to crypto, how do you articulate like why these two work together? Like why are they complementary? What sort of synergy is there that you find between these two very different sectors?
Yeah. Well, first off, there's a kind of interesting tension between this. I think AI in its nature tends to be centralized. It would prefer to be centralized because you need, powerful cloud computing facilities. You need a huge amount of data. You need to train a model that you might take an enormous amount of energy to train that model, but once it's trained, you can use it many times. Okay, so there is a kind of centralization that's, I think, intrinsic to AI. It's sort of like, think about, what AGI would be. It would be like some sort of centralized God almost. But that's why it's so important to, companies, or not companies, countries, to control an AI, because there's going to be like the war of the AIs. That's going to probably happen in our lifetime. So it's very centralized. And then you, of course, have Web3 is very decentralized. And so it might seem like those are incompatible, but I actually think that makes them very compatible because you've got, the thing about an AI is it's great at personalization. And in Web3, what you have, everybody owns their assets, okay? And Web3 is very, very conducive to individual, individual differentiation because everybody's got a different wallet. You can quickly figure out, who's got what. It's actually a very natural matchup between your kind of centralized prediction of individual interests and the fact that all these people own their assets out there and you have all this data. So I think that you've got personalization is one thing that they have in common. And there's two approaches. You have a centralized and a decentralized approach. So I think when you bring them together, you get a kind of balance, which I think is very nice. Another thing is that, of course, AI needs a lot of data. Well, what a blockchain gives you is extremely well-organized, publicly available data, right? It's a publicly available record of ownership. It is great data for training an AI. And the last thing that you get is once you decide what you want to do with an AI, okay, AI makes some recommendation, a blockchain lets you do it without anybody's permission. And that's extremely important. So you could have lots of different AIs out there making different predictions, but when someone makes a decision using their AI, they can then act in a permissionless way on the blockchain. As long as they have the permission of all the parties involved, they can act. They don't need write access to the database. So it's kind of like you have this decentralized database, you have centralized computing, and you put them together, and you get new possibilities. That's what we're seeing with NeoSwap. You have new economic possibilities that come from this blend of centralized and decentralized power.
This was a total pleasure. We really appreciate you being able to hop on and speak with us about just basically this like bleeding edge tech that you're working on. Before we go, if someone wants to follow NeoSwap and your team, what would you recommend?
Yeah, I would say start with our Twitter. So NeoSwap_AI on Twitter. There's my Twitter is John_Ennis_BTC. I have a lot of libertarian views, so you may encounter those. So if you're a hardcore statist, you probably won't enjoy what I have to say. But yeah, that's those would be the two starting points. And I would say, there's a whole other flip side of how AI and Web3 work together. Like what I describe right now is AI sitting on top of Web3. But I think when you see with the gaming stuff, you have the generative AI feeding into you can have the other arrangement too, Web3 on top of AI. So we're focused on AI on top of Web3, and I think it's great. People, if they say that crypto doesn't do anything new, are so unbelievably wrong. They're wrong to the point they probably shouldn't talk, because it's just like you don't know shit about it all. So yeah, that's my opinion.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. If you're a talented builder like John, please consider reaching out to our team at fourthrevolution.capital. And for future episodes of the Edge podcast, please subscribe at our link tree at edge_pod.